Hello Waheshimiwas, welcome back to the channel. Now there was a timely video doing rounds recently where thousands of Kenyans stand up for a job interview at the G4S headquarters, and the interview was only seeking to fill just about 150 slots. Now this is just a tiny fraction of the reality on the ground of unemployment. So as promised, let's get into the issue that every government in Kenya since independence has tried to solve but hasn't been very successful, and that is unemployment. Now this first video is going to be the cornerstone of everything else that I'll speak about, because I'll be breaking down what exactly unemployment is and what it means for the country. My name is Wanjiku. I'm the founder of Wanjiku's Eye, and here I discuss the relationship between economic development and governance so that you can understand, engage, and influence the matters that affect you and I. Welcome to Wanjiku's Eye. Now, I was reading the Daily Nation at the beginning of the year, and I came across an article that really caught my interest. Now, InfoTrack did a study to find out the key concerns that a sample of Kenyans had with regards to the state of affairs of the country. Now, Kenyans said that one of the issues that they were very concerned about was unemployment. But on the other hand, their least concern was bad politics and the cost of doing business. Now, the reason why this really intrigued me is because there is a correlation between the three. That part of the reason why there is high unemployment in Kenya is because of bad politics and a high cost of doing business. However, I tried to summarize this topic into a single video, but I wouldn't be doing you justice. So the main goal of this series is to make you understand that unemployment is not just a matter of who has a job and who doesn't. I want you to look at unemployment as a predicament. It's something that puts the country and the people in very, very difficult circumstances. And so the state of employment or unemployment in a country is one indicator of how healthy or unhealthy a country is. And dealing with unemployment is complex because many other things in running the country become complicated. Unemployment is a symptom, meaning it points to many issues in an economic system, and it also causes certain things, and it's also caused by certain things. So by system, I mean the things that define our country. And here we are talking about how is our business environment, how does the government run its affairs, are the people healthy and educated, who has the money and the resources, what is our way of doing things, etc. So welcome to the unemployment series, where I'll discuss the state of employment, why we have higher unemployment in Kenya, the political, social, and economic impact it has in Kenya, what the government has tried to do to resolve unemployment, and the current issues in the state of employment in Kenya. So if you're struggling to find a job or struggling to switch jobs, or you know someone who is, make sure that you watch this series. So let's start from here. What defines unemployment? It means that there are people who are looking for work. There are people who need the jobs, but the employers are not willing to hire them for various reasons, including regardless of whether people have skills or not. Now, when we talk about the predicament of unemployment in a country, we are pointing to two scenarios that come up because of people needing a job but can't find one. First, we're pointing to the fact that there are people who are employable and actively looking for a job but are unable to find a job. But secondly, there are people who are already in the workforce who are already working but do not have an appropriate job. So So to put this into context, for example, someone is forced by circumstances to become a hawker to make a living, or someone who went to university, studied to become maybe an architect, but out of circumstances is forced to become a makanga. And I want you to mark my words, forced by circumstances. So this situation of the architect being forced to become a makanga is called underemployment. So you have skills, but your skills are not working for you. So a situation where employers don't need your skills leads to underemployment. So those are the two unfortunate situations that come up in a country with high unemployment. Now, just to be clear, a country cannot have everyone who is of the working age employed at any one time, because we have retirees, we have people who are incapacitated, people who are sick, nursing mothers, people in school, people who have just decided not to work, maybe because they have an inheritance. So there are different types of unemployment. So just to be clear for this series, the kind of unemployment that I'm talking about is not the one that happens during a recession where people lose jobs maybe because of a pandemic or because of the war. For this series, I'm talking about unemployment as a condition that persists for a long, long time. Like in the Kenyan context, unemployment has been an issue since we got independence, that's 60 years later. And the reasons for unemployment in Kenya are complicated. It's one problem being piled onto another, leading to even more unemployment. But one thing for a fact is that you cannot solve unemployment as a country if your government does not have the vision to do so and is not committed to solving it. Why? Because unemployment by its nature brings about many, many more problems into a country, and it requires very highly coordinated efforts to solve it. So in Kenya, generally speaking, about the governments we've had, the vision to end unemployment is there on paper, but the commitment to end it, not really. So high unemployment that persists for years is an indicator of underdevelopment, meaning a country hasn't been progressing as it should. So unemployment is a nightmare for any responsible government, and you will understand why by the time I am through with this series. So, what is unemployment by strict definition, and why is it so difficult to measure? Now, in Kenya, the unemployment rate is said to be somewhere around 7 to 10%. But I don't want you to focus on that number because it minimizes how bad the state of unemployment is. And this is why. Now, for someone to be counted as a person who is unemployed, they have to meet these 4 conditions. They are able to work, they are actively looking for work, and have looked for work in the last 4 weeks as of when the research is done. And obviously, they are unable to find the work despite looking for it. So if a person has given up on looking for work, but they need the work and they have the ability to work, that person is not counted as unemployed. Also, if a man or a woman doesn't have a job, yet they need it, but they can't work because they need to stay at home to look after the family, probably because they can't find someone else to help them do that, they are not counted as unemployed. So using the unemployment rate by the strict definition can really underestimate the number of people who can work, need the work, but can't find the jobs. Now, let's look at the figures. The Kenyan workforce is made up of 28 million people. That's the people who are at the age where they can work. 10 million people out of the 28 million people are out of jobs. And out of that 10 million people who are out of jobs, 2.5 million are actively looking for work, while the rest of the 7.5 million are economically inactive. This means that 7 million people have either given up looking for work, or can't take up a job, or do not need the jobs for whatever reason. Then also, the hardest hit segment of the population are youth between the age of 18 to around 30 years, maybe even to 35. They're the ones who are struggling with unemployment the most, regardless of whether they have the degrees or not. So statistics say that 65% of youth aged 18 to 35 years do not have jobs. That translates to 9 million out of 14 million young employable people. And a majority of the ones who are employed in informal jobs where there's no job security, it's informal and very low paying. That's why unemployment among the youth is one of the biggest concerns for the government of Kenya, and even for other governments that have strong relations with Kenya. So what does this predicament mean for you as the job seeker? What are the dynamics that you're working with? So as I discuss this is not the time to be a motivational speaker and to glorify suffering as to how people should settle for anything. A country facing high unemployment does not only affect the people looking for jobs, but also the people who are already employed. So number one, the dynamic in the labor market is such that the demand for labor is low, but the supply is high. What I mean by this is that there are many job seekers, but not enough employers willing to employ them for different reasons. Which brings me to number two. Because there are many people looking for jobs, that means that competition will be very high. And when competition is very high, that means that employers have more power than the workers, especially when it comes to negotiating the terms of the employment contract. What do I mean again? Because there are very many people looking for jobs, it's easier for the employer to dictate the salary or the remuneration, even if it's unfair. They can also dictate your working hours and even your working conditions. So basically, you're at a disadvantage at the negotiating table. So unless you really differentiate yourself and show yourself to be different from the rest, the employer typically has more power over you because they can easily replace you. And since the employers have more negotiating power, that takes me to number four. It presents a scenario where it's very easy for employers to exploit their employees. And a great example of this is the great debate that happens on Twitter, payment with exposure. So payment with exposure is where established companies are in a repeated cycle of recruiting interns, but without even providing a stipend to cater for the interns' transport costs to and from work as just the bare minimum. So the company strategically gets free labor, but the companies normally defend themselves, saying that the company is providing the intern with exposure as the intern gets some job experience. Then number five, because of these dynamics that exist in the labor market, it becomes very difficult for you to switch jobs if you want to, because getting another one won't be that easy. Unless you're polikapigade. So whether you're being harassed by your boss, or it's a toxic work environment, or if you're just unfulfilled with your job, you're forced to make a very difficult decision to stay in a difficult place or leave without a plan. Then finally, number six, it's highly likely that you'll be referred to as overqualified, and not in a nice way, if you get more academic certificates before you make a name for yourself in the field. So ideally, it's an economic law that the more you invest in your education, the higher the rewards. But in a country where unemployment is a problem, having multiple degrees and certificates can become a curse, because employers will always hide behind this statement that we can't afford you. And rightfully so, because as I said, the assumption is that the more skills that you have, the more you should earn. So in conclusion, basically in an economy where unemployment is predominant, you'll be relying on God and luck to find a job, as opposed to a healthy functioning economic system working in your favor. So obviously there are some exceptions to the rule. There are some people who have come up with very innovative ideas after being pushed to self-employment because they could not get a job. But as I have said, those are exceptions. So in my next video, I'll be discussing why we have high unemployment in Kenya and why it has been a problem for so long. So be sure to stick around for that. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And also don't forget to share this video among your circles, especially the people struggling to find a job. Most importantly, don't forget to subscribe. I see many people watching and they haven't subscribed to the channel. So anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Cheers.